and everyone to the celebration of Gita Jayanthi. I assure you that this program shall be full of exuberance and excitement and will create some beautiful memories for all of us because it's rightly said, days are not lost when memories are being created. We would like to start the program with the prayer. For that, I would like to welcome Ashwati. Ashwati, please.
ध्यायामो धवलावगुण्डनवतीं तेजोमयीं नैष्टिकीं स्निग्धापाङ्गविलोकिनीं भगवतीं मन्दस्मितश्रीमुखीं वात्सल्यामृतवर्षिणीं सुमधुरं सङ्कीर्तनालापिनीं श्यामाङ्गीं मधुसिक्तसूक्तिम् अमृतानन्दात्मिकामीश्वरीम् ॐ अमृतेश्वर्यै नमः ॐ अमृतेश्वर्यै नमः ॐ अमृतेश्वर्यै नमः.
Thank you, Ashwati. It was really a pleasing one.
Om Namah Shivaya. And I'm Harshita and currently a sophomore from Computer Science Department. So, today, Gita Jayanthi, the day on which the Bhagavad Gita was released, is celebrated as Gita Jayanthi. The Srimad Bhagavad Gita literally means the divine song or the song of Lord. This ancient scripture and philosophical work has conversations that endured Lord Krishna's advice, messages, and teachings to Arjuna. Before the start of Kurukshetra, which was inevitable after many attempts of reconciliation failed. We already know that in the Gita, Arjuna expressed many doubts, asked many questions because he is faced with a very difficult situation in his life and he wants to know how he can take the right decision too. Krishna gave many different possible solutions to all the questions that were asked by Arjuna. Lord Krishna, while speaking, promises that your individual fate and choice will be honored so that he asked him to choose his own decisions. So, Krishna, we already know that Krishna is the supreme being and he is also called as Jagat Guru or the teacher of the world because Gita is relevant for all the humanities in all times because the Gita teaches us how to transform from an average human being to an extraordinary human being and then become divine. So all these human being, divine, everything, Gita also teaches you how to handle that type of knowledge. It only includes in you the right perspective of observing and knowing yourself too, as well as the entire creation. It also teaches you how to handle that knowledge acquired through search observance. You know that like we need to have a lot of observance and knowledge, right, when we have to succeed in something so that Lord Krishna keeps on delivering until Arjuna is convinced that he is ready to take on the world with the divine knowledge and that he just received. So now we have two of our enthusiastic friends who are going to give an explanation on Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 14. So now let us welcome Ganga Ganeshan from S3 Become studying taxation and finance. She is a person who likes to innovate and who has a great passion towards music and mural painting and also very interested in Indian culture, itihas and love to participate in school services. So for today's talk, we welcome Ganga.
Thank you, Harshita. Om Amriteshwari Namaha. Namah Shivaya. First of all, let me thank Ayuth for giving me such an opportunity to be a part of Gita Jayanthi celebration, Gita Pravesh. Bhagavad Gita have always influenced me in my life. Not only my life, if we take the list of the great people around us, or including those who are sitting here, Bhagavad Gita has influenced us in some or the other way. So, uh, like, let me share you one of my favorite verse, as Harshita said, from chapter 2, shloka 14. मातृस्पर्शास्तु कौन्तेय शीतोष्णः सुखदुःखदः आगमपैनो नित्य तान्तितिक्षस्व भारता. The meaning. This shloka is said by Krishna to Arjuna. O son of Kunti, the contact between the senses and the sense objects gives rise to fleeting perceptions of happiness and distress. These are non-permanent and come and go like the winter and summer season. O descendant of Bharat, one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Here in this shloka, we can see that Arjuna is addressed in two ways. First of all, he is addressed as Kaunteya, which signifies his great blood relationship from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, it is showing that he's having a greater heritage, and it brings a responsibility towards Arjuna, and he cannot avoid fighting. So here what Krishna is really describing about, he is describing about the five senses of human: the sense of sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. Now whatever we do is for the satisfaction of our senses, right? Like when we take an example, what is the real use of a watch? We use watch for just looking the time or knowing the time. But we tend to buy different brands of watches and keep it in our shelf or in our cupboard. But nowadays what I can see is that most of the time we tend to buy different brands of watches, but when we go out or something, we don't even look at watch. We take the smartphone or we ask to some other people. We never try to look at the watch, but we buy that, right? This is what we are doing for the satisfaction of our senses. So whatever we do is just to satisfy the sense. But my question is that, is these sensations that we want in our life or want to satisfy, is it permanent? No. These sensations are just like seasons, as Krishna is saying that it is just like seasons. They come and they go. They have a beginning and they also have an end. So happiness from these sensations are also transitory. And now when we take the case of Arjuna, he is having a relationship with his relatives, like he is having a material bond with his family. Even thinking about that, he cannot avoid fighting because that material bond is also temporary. Now, to make it little more relevant, let me share you an experience of my life to all of you. A phase where in my life, even these sensations couldn't give happiness to me. A stage where I myself understood the material world is just temporary. Now, when I was studying in ninth, the second semester was going on. I had an accident and my health was completely not well. I had a calcaneus fracture at my right leg and also L5 fracture at the spine. I was told to not even move my body for around 3 months. Like for a person like me, I was very active. Okay, I cannot sit idle. I'm a chatterbox, as you can think now itself. I talk a lot, and I don't like to sit alone in my room. I want someone or the other. Okay, so such kind of a person, at a moment coming to a hospital without just moving, I have to be in the bed for like 3 4 months. That was really hard for me. Like I can't even think about me, because before that I haven't went to hospital for a fever itself. I went to hospital, but that day itself I came back. But for me, 3 months and all was very hard to think. So that was a turning point in my life, I could say you, because at that time, what I could just see in the hospital is that a ceiling above me, nothing more. So it was a time of realization for me. I have done many things. Okay, I can't tell that I haven't done things, but when I think that times when I think about that, what I understood is that I did things for only for my happiness. So from that day onwards, many questions arised in my mind. Like I must say that these questions should be there in all of your mind. A question everyone have to think about. The first question was that what these temporary sensations gave me, that what all certificates or what all medals that I took in the school life and all, what sensations they gave me. And have I done anything great? Is there anything to remember? And is anyone happy because of me? At this moment, when I'm thinking in the hospital, is anyone happy because of me? And to conclude these questions, the last question was, these 14 to 15 years, what did I do? That was a question that came into my mind. And that was a time of realization. Like uh, from that day on, from that day when these questions arised in my mind, that day on, I want, when I recover, I want to do something great. Each and every day, I want something to be great. Like every day, I have to make someone happy, or not just for my satisfaction, but for also others' happiness. So after March, I started recovering. I was able to walk and was able to go to school. It was like my second life. No, it is my second life. This is my second life. From that day on, I never pray. Like I only pray two things when I go to temples and all. Whatever the big temple, whichever temple, whenever I go there, I just pray two things. The first thing is that make my life meaningful. Okay, there should be a purpose for my life. At the end, I should feel happy, or I should feel uh, a satisfaction which will be there permanently. Okay, the second one is Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. These few things only I'll pray when I go to temples and all. Now, what I want to tell you to all is that more than just seeing these material things, if we are able to realize ourselves and go deep into our inner self, then we can create the best from us. Like there is some talent in us, and if you understand it and use it in a very better manner, then it will be the thing that you can that makes a purpose for your life. And we always tend to keep goals that satisfy our need, because nowadays what I can see in the world is that we all keep a goal, or we all want to satisfy just our need. Okay, we are not thinking about the other people or the society, or who are with us. Okay, we'll set a goal, and when that goal is satisfied, another goal comes in. Okay, it's like a race. We are in a competition. The world is in a competition. So, like this thing also came into my thinking. So after coming back to school, I took part in many programs. Like before the accident and all, I used to take part in just some individual programs where at the end I will get some trophy or certificate, which just only satisfied me, and that happiness is just temporary. So when I came back, I participated in group events such as like NGO programs. One was like we took part in an NGO program as a whole class, and we was able to give collect a fund for an orphan at Kerala. And whenever till this moment, if I remember about that, I'm really happy, or I get motivated, because whenever I'm down, those orphan kids smile when I remember that. I'm really happy. And now, for example, we can take the situation, this session itself, we can take an example. If I'm going to write these experiences and these things in a notebook and keeping it closed, what benefit? Only I am benefited from that. But when I share with all of you, someone from these 20 people or 30 people, even one is satisfied with that, it will be a purpose of my life. Okay, so thinking like that, we have to do each and every karma in our life. And Another thing is that I should recommend this to everyone that I started to write a gratitude list before going to bed. Before going to bed, I used to list all the things I got today. So whenever I felt bad or whenever a day is bad for me, I just go through these this book, because that time I will get motivated, because I feel like I'm lucky. I'm a lucky, or I'm a chosen friend, a chosen child of God. So I think everyone should start at that such a habit, and we should be prepared to tolerate the appearing and disappearing of things in our life. That is very important. If there is a start in anything, there will be an end. That is the truth. We have to understand that. And in the absence of self realization, there is always sorrow. We should always remember that whenever we go behind these material things, only the body is actually experiencing these things. And what we humans do is that we consider the body and soul as the same. Okay. And this misconception is factually the cause of sorrow. We never tried to understand the reason of sorrow, because once the unhappiness comes, when it ends, the next happiness comes, and we don't understand why this sorrow came, or what is the reason behind our sorrow. So due to this temporary nature reaction arising in the body due to these perceptions of the senses, we should study to tolerate it, because every time think that every moment is temporary. Okay. As I told, it will come and it will disappear. So through this verse which I recited today, it is a hint to understand the eternal essence. The verse gives us a preparatory step to develop the capability of brave endurance against joy and sorrow. It says us that any contact with the material object that we see around us is temporary. It will appear and then disappear. It has a beginning and also an end. Therefore, if we know something has an end, why should we let it bother us? If we have a positive or negative time in our life, please do keep these words. This time too will pass. So let me conclude by saying that Bhagavad Gita is a signature of Lord Krishna to motivate us to make or leave our own great signatures in the world through a very meaningful life. So let everyone be blessed to create their own signatures in the world by a meaningful life. Thank you, Namah Shivaya. I guess I could help with my experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ganga, for describing about the five senses, and also Ganga, like the realization you got when you were hurt, and that experience was really inspiring. Like every one of us have to question that ourselves, and we have to completely accept that we always tend to keep goals and that satisfy our need. But if we are going to keep meaningful purposes for each goal, that would help others too, and then that happiness would always be there. And also, in the absence of self realization, there is always sorrow. Thank you, Ganga, for making us understand on how to be tolerating with the feelings of happiness and distress and that everything. And also tell us how these material objects that we see and feel are temporary in nature.
Thank
So,
you.
so here we have another mechanical engineering student from S3. He has been a keen interest on appreciating good music and believes in a positive approach to problems. Now we would like to welcome Sharath S.
Thank you, Harshida, for that lovely introduction. First of all, Om Amriteshwarya Namaha. I would like to thank Ayudh for giving me this opportunity as a part of Gita Jayanthi. I would like to take this opportunity to present a sloka that I personally found really relatable to my life, and I hope I can help others with that too. So this sloka is the 14th one, 14th sloka in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Here Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, Matra sparshastu kaunteya Shitoshna sukha dukkadha Agama payino nitya तान् स्थितक्षस्व भारत. This literally translates to, O son of Kunti, the contact between senses and the sense objects gives rise to fleeting perceptions of happiness and distress. These are non-permanent and come and go like winter and summer. O descendant of Bharat, one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Arjuna, as you know, was in a great dilemma to fight with his relatives in the Kurukshetra war. This confusion is acknowledged by Sri Krishna in this sloka, where he says that everyone has five senses, that is, the sense of vision, the sense of smell, the sense of touch, the sense of hearing, and the sense of taste. When the senses come in contact with sense objects, it results in sukha or dukkha, either of the two, which is happiness or sorrow. Neither of these perceptions are permanent, and they come and go just like seasons. So, for relatability, let me put that into perspective here. Think about ice cream. Think about having a cone of ice cream in the intense heat of summer. All of us love that experience, right? But having the same cone of ice cream in a winter is not a pleasant experience. So, the same sense object creates both happiness and an irritating experience. So, what we need to understand here is that the thing that matters here is our perception. Sri Krishna goes on to say that one should not be affected by the emotions that arise from these perceptions, and one should move on fulfilling their rightful duties towards themselves and towards others. Or if we can put it into other words, we can say that in a proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of such feelings that keep occurring to us at different points of time. All of us are aware of the COVID-19 situation that all of us are going through right now. And still, even though the situation has improved, in certain areas, they are still not in a commentable situation. That is, during the early days of pandemic, doctors all over the world worked tirelessly for long shifts every day to contain the massive number of patients, right? The disease was spreading like wildfire and had no intention of stopping. And in the early days, even medical science had no a cure for it. So what worsened the situation was that the extensive number of symptoms that occurred. That is, for each individual, it would be different. What makes it really worse is that the conditions of each individual varied with how they were infected. And not only that, it affected all bands of people regardless of their age and health condition. And the death toll had no intention of slowing down. Nevertheless, doctors and medical personnel ranging from nurses, sanitary workers, and ambulance drivers were dealing with this situation in the forefront. They worked long hours in PPE kits and tough environments for months, separated from their friends and family. This, I'm sure, must have been a bitter experience for them, but they knew how important the work they were doing was. And because of which they could, keeping in mind a hope for a better tomorrow, they could work towards a better tomorrow collectively. So as we know, this perseverance and optimistic thinking from their part was greatly impacting the situation as of now, Like as of now, we can see that vaccination drives are really successful across the globes. So it was only because they could set aside their personal emotions and work collectively for a greater good, and healing the people. So that should be a great example if we are trying to relate this sloka into the contemporary world. Is it just doctors? No, I think every individual at some point of time will encounter such situations where they have to set aside personal emotions to work towards a better goal. Recently, I came across a quote in social media that is, "Don't promise when you're happy, don't reply when you're angry, and don't decide when you're sad." So, in the end, we are all humans and all have personal emotions. It says that personal emotions like this can affect a person's life choices. It would, I would like to remind everyone that this sloka is not about disregarding emotions as a altogether, and I would personally say that it is about having an ability to navigate through such situations with an open and optimistic mind without being distracted by it. Let's take an iconic example of what I mean. All of us know Lionel Messi, right? He is one of the greatest footballers of all time, and he had always dreamed about getting an international cup for his country, Argentina. He tried it he tried it in 2014 World Cup, where unfortunately he lost the finals to Germany in the penalty shootouts. He tried it again in 2015 and 16 Copa America finals, where both times they were defeated by Chile. But and in the midst of that grief, he announced a statement regarding his retirement. Even the fans were shocked hearing this news. So, but upon realizing that his decision was just based on the temporary grief that he had encountered on losing the finals, he came back to his team and decided to continue playing. He worked harder uh, s- and looking forward. In 2020 Copa America, Argentina defeated Brazil to become the champions, and Messi finally has an international cup for that he won for his country. And I would like to say that the sloka here is also valid in modern day relationships, not just thinking professionally. It is also valid in modern day relationships. The alarming rates of harassment cases on rejecting love affairs is a thing of deep concern, and is one of the great issues that our society faces today. This happens because people act on dangerous levels of emotional pressure rather than thinking about a situation rationally. If we can do the latter, however, it would set a great example for generations to come. Um, as of speaking about personal experiences, I could also relate some experiences that I had in life with when I heard this sloka. This incident took place a few years ago during the last days of schooling. I studied in Navodaya Vidyalaya, which had a hostel setup, and many of my friends from other streams had finished their exams, and most of them left the campus for their homes. And I wasn't taking the idea of leaving my friends, the campus, the hostel life, and the school days like completely. I have to get over that, right? So emotionally speaking, I wasn't taking that situation very in a very good manner. But I eventually understood that I would of course miss my school life for sure, but I had to move on from it. Nothing lasts forever, and some things are bound to change. And I wouldn't regret the decision that I made to stay focused in such and emotionally bitter moments. I'm sure everyone here slightly misses their schooling days, and I would also appreciate everybody the courage that everyone showed to get over the emotional state that everyone was personally in. So I would like to conclude my words by saying that deep emotions separate human beings from animals. But I would recommend that all of us learn to regulate and handle emotions in a better way for a better future altogether. Thank you. Namaskar.
Yeah. That was a great description of senses that they are like seasons. Like how you said, emotions are like seasons. And you also gave an example of an ice cream. Like when we have ice cream during the summer season, we feel so pleasant and happy. And at the same time, when we have the same ice cream in a rainy season, then it's not a good thing. Then you also told about the pandemic situation. Like we all face the same pandemic situation, and many of the families faced the emotional. They were emotionally dull. And in my personal experience, also my father had COVID-19, so he was there for bed rest for 2-3 months. So I was also emotionally dull. So I learned that we should not be emotionally dull, and we should overcome the situation and accept the situation. So we should always handle our emotions in a right manner, and we should always have an emotion with something, or we should be attached to something, but not in an overly manner. Everything should be in a controlled manner. And you also told that in about the example of the modern day relationship, which has a deep concern in the society at present. This is because of the when people go out of the emotion and do some negative things to the society. So I think this also must be controlled, and I hope one day our society will stand away from all the negative things like this. The personal experience which you said was the thing which we all have experienced. Like when we say goodbye to our school life and all, we just feel that we just get emotionally dull for 2-3 days. Like, oh, our school days got over, now what to do? We have having the COVID-19 situations and all, so we just get emotionally dull. But I think we all overcame to that, and for that I would like to salute all of you for controlling the emotion and to stay happy in the situation where you are. So yeah, so I think the model of this sloka is like it emphasizes the need to regulate non-permanent emotions of happiness and distress while abiding by one's rightful duty. Thank you so much, Sarath, for sharing your experience and motivating us. Thank you so much.
Glad I could help. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And now let's move with the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 63. K. Bhavana is currently a second-year student graduating from BTech Electronics and Computer Engineering. She has always been interested in learning about the Indian history, culture, and mythology. I would like to welcome Bhavana for explaining this sloka and also to share her life experience relating to it. Bhavana, please.
Thank you for the introduction, Nandini. So, Om Amriteshwariye Namaha. I'm Kaladindi Bhavna, a second year student from EAC branch. As part of Gita Pravesha, today I'll be speaking about chapter 2, verse 63 from Bhagavad Gita, which I believe that every person, no matter which age they are, can relate to. The shloka is as follows. Krodhat bhavati sammohah, sammohat smritivibramaha, smritibhranshat buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. Let us understand the shloka word by word. Krodhat, from anger. Bhavati, comes. Sammohah, clouding of judgment. Krodhat bhavati sammohah. From anger comes clouding of judgment. Sammohat, from clouding of judgment. Smriti, memory. Vibramah, bewilderment. Sammohat smriti vibramah. From clouding of judgment comes the bewilderment or confusion of memory. Smriti Bhranshad, from bewilderment of memory, Buddhinashah, destruction of intellect. Smriti Bhranshad, Buddhinashah, Bewilderment of memory causes destruction of intellect. Buddhinashat, from destruction of intellect, pranashyati. One is ruined. Buddhinashat pranashyati. Destruction of intellect leads to ruin of oneself. That is, anger leads to clouding of judgment, which results in bewilderment of memory. When the memory is bewildered, the intellect gets destroyed, and when the intellect is destroyed, one is ruined. Anger clouds judgment. When angry, we all make mistakes and regret later. Why do we make those mistakes in the first place? We do that because we are under the influence of our anger, and our faculty of judgment is affected, which leads to bewilderment or confusion of our memory, and we forget what we are doing, whether that is right or not, and everything related to it, because we are just going with the flow of emotions. The emotions build up to such an extent that we lose the capacity to think, that is, our intellect gets destroyed. The reason we humans are different from other species is our intellect, the capacity to think. So, when our intellect gets destroyed, we are destroyed, and we are no longer different from other species. Thus, we often hear people say, "You behave like an animal when you are angry." Well, that is true, because as I said, we lose our intellect and are no longer different from other species. So it all starts with one thought, and before we know it, we have gone through a total self annihilation because we don't think about the consequences of our actions. The path of anger, from destruction of judgment to destruction of oneself, is what is described in the shloka. To understand about this, we can see an example from Mahabharata itself, like the time when Duryodhana finds out about the Maya Sabha of Pandavas and how great and marvelous the palace was with its artistic workmanship, he feels jealous of Pandavas. He visits the palace and was illusioned by the craftsmanship of demon Maya. The palace was so decorated in different places that one who did not know the tricks would consider water to be land and land to be water. Same thing happens to Duryodhana. He crosses water thinking it to be land and ends up falling in a lake. Bhima, along with Arjuna, laugh at his foolishness. This makes Duryodhana angry, thinking how can they insult him like that, and leaves the palace. Blinded with anger and raging with anger, he goes to Shakuni, and with his help, Duryodhana calls Yudhishthira for the game of dice. Duryodhana makes use of Yudhishthira's weakness and makes him lose everything, including his wife Draupadi, in that game. Then comes the Draupadi Vastraharan incident, which ultimately leads to the Great War, where millions of people die along with Duryodhana's family and himself. Duryodhana, being a king, should be patient and should have followed Dharma. But as he was blinded by anger, he made choices which he shouldn't have, which no one with a good intellect would do, like, like disrobing a woman in a sabha full of men. This act resulted in him being the reason for the great war of Mahabharata and the loss of many great souls. At the end, he lost himself and his family. So, anger leads to his destruction. We also listen to many day-to-day life quotes related to this shloka, like anger is a feeling that makes your mouth work faster than your mind. And also, a moment of patience in a moment of anger saves thousand moments of regret. To understand all this a bit more clearly, I would like to share my own experience about it, where I understood much more about the shloka. So, when I was in school, one day I had a rough day. Like, as a student, there were some miscommunications with my friends and betrayals and all those things. So, I was messed up and I had a lot of uh, anger in me. Like, I was feeling a lot of emotions like frustration and anger. And it continued till I reached home. After reaching home, as usual, my mother asked me to have lunch. But as I was in a bad mood, I didn't reply. Mother, being a mother, started asking me to have lunch continuously a few more times. And I started feeling irritated. which increased my anger. Even though what my mother said was for my good, I felt as if she was irritating me knowingly, and my mind was clouded by negative thoughts. And I was not able to control the anger and burst it out on her. I said things which seemingly hurt her, and my mother left me alone in my room. After a few moments, when the anger in me subsided, I started thinking about what I said to my mother and what all happened that day, how I behaved with her. Then came the realization that I spoke things which I never meant and started regretting shouting at her. A question constantly came in my mind, like, how could I shout at my mother like that? The answer was I was not in the right state of my mind. My mind was filled with anger and was clouded with negative thoughts. I didn't give it a second thought about whether what I was doing was right or not. That incident gave me a clear understanding of how anger clouds our intellect. Getting angry is common, it's also a human emotion which we all feel. But to not make mistakes and regret later, we should control it and not let it affect our intellect. For that, I would like to share few things which I personally have been following after that incident. That is, first, I try to be patient as long as I can and think positively, think from others' point of view so that the negative thoughts don't fill my mind. Second, if I get angry, I try not to talk. But if I have to, I think twice, thrice, and a lot of times so that I won't say things which I don't mean to say and regret later. Third, I write down whatever I feel in that moment in my diary, which helps me in subsiding my anger. So at the end, my anger also subsides and I don't do things which I may regret. So, from my personal experience and based on the shloka, I realized and learned that it's always better to think twice before doing anything, and that we should be the person who thinks before doing something even when the emotions are clouding our judgment. I hope this shloka will help you all in your life as well. Hereby, I'll be ending this talk by chanting the shloka once again. क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. नमः शिवाय.
So we already heard that, right? The consequences of our actions are inevitable. Bhavana, you really made us understand the consequences of anger, and from how it made us understand, I mean, the clouds of our judgment too, and how it can ruin us, and also it makes us understand how we should not let anger take control of us. I can understand about the mood swings we faced, especially frustration and anger when we are little down. We at that particular moment we might just come out and we might just burst out and we might just show that on the people who are in front of us. Even though how much we try to be calm, at that particular moment we might be a little bit annoyed. I know. So I personally think that every one of us have to remember not talk about anything that might hurt others. At that moment, yeah, like we have to completely accept what Bhavna told, that it's always better to think twice before doing anything. While we are angry, better to think like should not better we shouldn't be the person who thinks before doing anything. Like after showing everything, after doing everything, you might regret it later, and that regret might be in your ages, like in the future also. I shouldn't be doing this, or I shouldn't have been doing this to my friends. And I know we have one or two incidents that happen in our life at sure. It might be our parents, friends, especially we show our anger to friends. We start scolding them and we start telling, why have you done this, why have you made me like this, like that, everything. So to conclude, like I want to tell that unless one brings his likes and dislikes under control, it is not possible to conquer one's anger, which is nothing else but a manifestation of the unfulfilled desires. So Bhavna, thank you for giving your experiences, and also thank you for telling those words also about the link between the anger and the story of in the Bhagavad Gita too.
Thank you.
Okay, now learning about Indian epics, music and theatre. Here is a student from mechanical engineering, one of our friend, Girindra A. Nair, who is going to come forward and tell about the verse 63. And he's also had a passion for acting and playing keyboard. And I welcome Girindra A. Nair.
Thank you, Harshita, for this wonderful introduction. Om Amradeshwarya Namaha. I am Girindra from S3 Mechanical Engineering. As a part of Gita Jayanthi, I am given an opportunity to talk on the verse 63 from chapter 2. Krodhat bhavati sammohaha sammohat smriti vikramaha smriti buddhinasha buddhinasha pranashyati. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. That means from anger comes clouding of judgment. Sammoha smriti vikramaha. That means clouding of judgment leads to bewilderment of memory. Smriti bramshat buddhi nasha. From bewilderment of memory, one's intellect is destroyed. Buddhi nasha pranashyat. From destruction of intellect, one is destroyed. So this further means anger leads to clouding of judgment, which results in bewilderment of the memory. When the memory is bewildered, the intellect gets destroyed, and when the intellect is destroyed, one is causes anger. The root cause of anger is thought, which leads to desire. When a person gets attached to material things, he gets lot of desire to enjoy that, and when that desire is not fulfilled, the person becomes angry. And when the person becomes angry, what happens next is they lose their intellect. Their memory is bewildered. And because of the loss of their intelligence, the person gets self-destructive behavior. When a person becomes angry, they lose their presence of mind. They lose their ability to judge what is right and what is wrong. They lose this power of discrimination, which ultimately leads to bewilderment of memory. The person might be aware of what he is doing. He might be aware that what he is doing is forbidden and what are its consequences. But his intellect is clouded and he flows along with the surf of emotions. Thus, the memory of all good things is lost, and their determination to be on the right path, which is to be on the right path, is lost. So they ultimately get into the wrong path, which is the path of destruction. This ladder of destruction, or ladder of fall, that begins with thought, which leads to desire, which leads to illusion, and when we are not able to achieve it, we get anger, which causes lot of intellect, which causes loss of intellect, and ultimately leading us to destruction. Now, I will share an incident that happened in my life. I was a short-tempered person. Being the only child, I always used to get what I want. Whatever I wanted, my parents would get it for me. From childhood onwards, my craze for cars was popular among my family. While I was studying in 12th grade, most of my friends used to bring their vehicles to the school. I used to watch them revving up their bikes in front of others and showing off. None of us had a driving license by then. I always wanted to take my vehicle to school. So one day I saw a perfect opportunity to take my car to school on annual day. So me and my friends started planning, like where to go after the celebration at school, where should we all go to eat, and so on. So a week before annual day, can I take a car to go to school on annual day? Me and my friends are planned to go to a cafe. It's near to the school. So my house was near to the school and I knew how to drive, so I thought Dad would allow me to take the car. But Dad's reaction was opposite to what I expected. You don't even have a driver's license and you're too young to drive by yourself. So no way. I was sad. I told my friends that my dad didn't allow me to take the car, whereas their parents allowed me. When I saw some of my friends bring their vehicle, I was both sad and jealous. I got angry because my dad would allow me to take the car when my friend's parents did. And from that day onwards, I wanted to take my car to school so badly. And whenever I asked my parents, they openly disapprove. After a long wait, I finally got a chance. Our school was organizing a farewell party for 12th standard. I took my car to school that day and there was a police checking near the school. I was caught in the checking. By the grace of God, I came out of that incident without any trouble. But that incident made a big change in my life. I realized my mistake. What happened was my intellect or presence of mind was bewildered by anger, and I couldn't foresee the purpose of my action. I learned that anger leads to self-destruction. It will lead us to danger. I got rid of my short-tempered behavior. My parents were so happy because of the change in my behavior. From my experience, I can say that learning to control anger can limit the emotional damage and help us to lead a peaceful life. How can we stop this anger? Well, the simple answer is we need to have a control on our thought. Let me tell you a story about the ancient Greek king Alexander. By conquering many lands, Alexander came to India. Alexander had heard of the Indian yogis and he wanted to take some of them to Greece. So one day, he went to meet some yogis. When he reached there, the yogi was sitting casually and meditating. Alexander didn't like the way yogi responded on seeing him. He thought he should be respected. He was annoyed. The yogi didn't show any external respect for Alexander. Alexander angrily said to the yogi, You don't know how to behave. Don't you know who I am? I will teach you a lesson that you will never forget. The yogi responded, I know who you are. Alexander said, Who? The yogi replied peacefully, You are a slave of my slave. Alexander confusedly asked, What do you mean by slave of your slave? The yogi said, Anger is my slave. You are a slave of anger. So you are a slave of my slave. If you can make anger and desire your slave, then you can lead a happy and peaceful life. When there is a thought of intellect, our intellect should come into play. Is this what I have come for? Do I really need it? Can I afford it? If it doesn't feel right, immediately get rid of that thought. We should be able to control our thoughts and attachments before it becomes a label. Bhagavad Gita teaches us how desire should not bother a person and how to handle any stressful situation with ease. It clears our mind from unnecessary thoughts and shows us how we can live our lives without attachment for material things and help us to live a happy life. I hereby conclude my words. Thank you.
Thank you, Girindra, for making us understand that we should not make anger or emotions to be our master. Instead, we must be the master of our emotions. We all are the slaves of our emotions. There are both negative and positive emotions that govern our minds. Positive emotions are those that bring happiness to us as well as it gives us a pleasure also. Anger, however, is the most destructive of all of the emotions if we consider. Anger is one of the emotions that changes the person completely. When the anger takes control of anyone, it makes him violent, aggressive, and unreasonable. Like how you explained with your example and how you overcame your short temperedness, like when you was in school, you tried to take your car to these like in your with your friends, like you wanted to show your car and you had to drive in front of your friends, but your parents refused and you got humiliated because your friends' parents allowed them to do and you were not. Finally, when you got a chance in your 12th farewell party, then you took the car and the police caught you and somehow you rescued from that. And at that time, you realized the importance of this. And I think it is the best life. And I think life experience is the one thing that teaches us many things. So And you also told about the story of Alexandra, how he visited the yogi and what yogi said. He said by stating a statement that you are the slave of the slave, the anger is your slave. He stated something like that, and from that we can learn that we should control our thought, then only we can control our anger. So I would also like to say, please control your anger and think twice or thrice before you speak or before you do something. Because when you are in an angry mood or something, you do something in stupidity, and afterwards you realize that thing. So I think you should realize before you say something. And that's all. Thank you once again, Girindra, for giving us such a beautiful thing and telling us and sharing us your experience with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nandini.
Yeah. So, happiness comes from Gita. In reading the Gita, there is no high or low. Everyone has equal access. It gives us a systematic overview of the territory, shows various approaches to the summit with their benefits and pitfalls. Tell us what to pack and what to leave behind. It asks us and answers the questions that you or I might ask. Questions about philosophy. No, it's not about philosophy, but about how to live life effectively in a world of challenge and change.
We also explore what happens when Arjuna has to make life-changing difficult decisions, especially the decision as to whether he should battle against his own family members in a war of good versus evil, and the importance of living an righteousness life. What we learn from today's session is that a person of discrimination should practice to tolerate both the feelings of happiness and distress without being disturbed by them. And also, because of the contact between the senses and objects, feelings of warmth and cold, pleasure and pain result. But these are just temporary and are created and disappear too. And anger gives birth to delusion, and delusion leads to confusion of memory. From the confusion of memory comes loss of intellect, and also loss of intellect results in destruction. So from the two slokas, we heard a lot of things that we have to change in us. Like we might face them in future or right now, but by Bhagavad Gita, we know what we have to do. So tomorrow there are few more slogans, and let's just meet tomorrow in the same time session. So thank you all. Nandini?
Yeah. Thank you all for joining. It was a great event. Thank you so much. Nam Shivaya.
Yeah, and now let's end this session by Loka Samasta, and I welcome Ashwati.
ॐ लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम्